It's been roughly about 1 month since I've had my Kshar Sutra thread removed when I went to visit Dr. Bapat in Pune, India. And I promised before I left that I would get on at intervals and give progress updates. But what I never imagined was that people would be, who are following me right now, would be kind of curious, I suppose, to know what's going on and PMing me and asking me for updates on what my bum looks like. So I've been joking with my husband that my bum seemed to have become like very, very low key famous. One question that people really, really want to know, because I've been very repetitive about saying in every one of my videos, or a lot of my videos anyway, that I've never experienced incontinence before, during, or after Kshar Sutra treatment. And that's still the case. I'm not incontinent to stool. But one question that I was asked was, can I hold in wind? And I was joking with this person that I didn't know at the time that they'd asked because I hadn't really tried. I was just so delighted, and I still am. It's been a month, and I still am just so delighted that a fart will come out of the right hole for the first time in a year instead of coming out of the fistula. Because if you have a fistula, there's your anus, and then there's the fistula hole somewhere where it shouldn't be, of course, and wind will go through the area that has the least resistance, and that's usually the fistula. So that's why I'm just so thrilled that I'm able to have a regular person fart. When this person asked me, can I hold wind? At that point I didn't know, just because I really hadn't tried. And so I did try, and yes, it's fine to hold wind. I find that, I guess, if I'm not careful, it can kind of slip out, which I'm pretty sure that happened before this happened, before I had Kshar Sutra treatment. So I would have to concentrate on clenching up those sphincter muscles to hold a fart in. But I'm not incontinent to wind or to stool, just in case anybody has been wondering. At this stage of my healing, I think I already said it's been about a month since I've had the thread removed. So at this stage of healing, what happens with Dr. Bapat's treatment is that the fistula was gone after the Kshar Sutra thread was removed about a month ago. The fistula is gone. Then there's an open wound that has to heal up before the area is considered completely healed, and that he told me that will take months, which I was fine with. So right now it's December 2017. And he's anticipating that by sometime in January, things will be completely healed up and that I will be able to get an MRI. And of course, I want to have an MRI so that I can have that proof for doctors when I go speak to specialists and doctors in my area, just to prove to them that I had Kshar Sutra treatment, explain to them what that treatment is, and show them my MRI as proof that it did work. So with all of that said, the wound is still healing. And as such, there is still a discharge coming from the wound. To give all the details, because people who are fistula fighters do want all the details. It doesn't smell like anything. It's not pus. It's a clear, thin, watery discharge, and this is something that commonly happens when you have a wound, especially a deep wound. It's actually, according to my research, necessary for the wound healing process. So there is still a thin, watery discharge that's coming out of my anal area. It's not a lot by any means. I would say it's probably about the size of maybe a half of a Q-tip head. If I see some, I might kind of scoop some away, and it's not much at all. Sometimes if I leave it for a little bit, maybe I'm at work and I don't use the washroom for few hours or something like that, which is amazing, because when I had a fistula, I was in that washroom every hour on the hour for the better part of a year. So now having to use the washroom like a regular person, only maybe once or twice, a few times a day, that's incredible. Anyway, if I leave, I guess, that discharge and I don't kind of haven't wiped it away for a while, it tends to kind of collect around my anal area, and it forms a little tiny, I call them boogers. They look like little tiny bum boogers. And I don't know, they're about maybe that big. Can anyone see that? They're really, really tiny. They're smaller than a Q-tip head. But since I have a very morbid sense of humor, I think I've never grown up. I think farting is hilarious. I think that boogers are hilarious. I still think that stuff is hilarious, and so I find the fact that I have little kind of bum boogers hilarious. But anyway, me and my tangents. There is still discharge coming from the area, and I would imagine that that will continue until the wound is completely healed, and the wound will not be completely healed until tissue has completely grown up in there's kind of like a hole in my anus right now, so that I can feel when I go to clean out the area. I would anticipate that that discharge will continue until that is completely done. I should say for anybody following my videos or who has stumbled on my videos that, of course, my healing journey will be different than anybody else's because, in my opinion, bodies heal at a different rate. They do different things when they're healing, so some people might have more discharge, some people might have less. When I had my abscess in my rectum about a year ago, the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me, and it took them 6 weeks just to figure out what was wrong with me. And by the time my surgeon in Canada drained my abscess, he said he just went to examine the area, and then he kind of put his finger right through it. He was just shocked. He said never in his career did he see that much damage to somebody's rectum that he could put his finger right through the hole. So because of that, and because of the way he drained it and the multiple surgeries, my fistula was bigger. The diameter of my fistula was bigger than most people's fistulas. That's what Dr. Bapat told me, and of course I would trust his opinion 100%. He sees fistulas all the time. So because the diameter of my fistula was bigger than normal, I'm thinking maybe my healing might be different than somebody who had a pinhole fistula, or a fistula that maybe they didn't have a diameter that was as big as mine. So I think it will take a while, considering how big my fistula was and what Dr. Bapat had to work through. Take a while for things to heal up, maybe longer than the average person, whatever the average person might be. And with all that said, there is a hole that's healing up that I can feel in my rectum. Before when I first started cleaning, the doctor recommended that for 2 weeks after the thread was removed, I clean the area with, first I was to take dry cotton, wrap it over my finger, and then go into my anus, and he called it scratching, so just kind of, oh, there's my light, sorry. Just kind of hook your finger around and give it a light scratch. It's not a scratch, but some light pressure. And then take iodine, put that on, soak that on the cotton ball, do the same motion, and then put maybe iodine cream in the area, because the iodine helps prohibit bacterial growth. So I followed those directions, and then he requested that I give him an update of my healing every other week, and so I have been doing that. And I said there's still some discharge, so he recommended I continue to keep the anal area clean so long as there's discharge. Because I'm paranoid, because of the horrible journey I had to go on with my Canadian doctors and getting my abscess and my fistula, because of my nervousness, not because of anything else, I have chosen to continue cleaning the area with iodine and with the cotton. That wasn't recommended by my doctor. It's me being nervous, choosing to do that. I was finally comfortable a few days ago to stop with the cotton iodine cream solution twice a day, and now I just do that after a bowel movement, and I'm making the choice to continue to do that until the hole that I can feel in my rectum is completely gone. One thing I'm noticing I'm sure it's the angle of my fistula, I don't have a fistula anymore. It's the angle of the wound. So there's my rectum, and it's kind of like this, so it's just the ideal spot for a stool to come down and get trapped up in anything that there is to be trapped in. So one thing that I found for the first, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks after the thread was removed was that stool could get trapped up into the little kind of cup that the hole in my rectum had formed. And so, of course, I made sure to take dry cotton and remove all of the stool out of there. And when that was done, then I would use iodine on the cotton ball, and then after that I would use the cream. So even though the doctor told me after 2 weeks, don't worry about doing it twice a day because of my nervousness, I still did it twice a day because I was worried about stool getting trapped up in that little cup. little hole in my rectum. And I didn't want any bacteria getting trapped in there, if that was even possible, or growing, so that was my reasoning. But now I think that the little wound or the hole on inside my rectum is small enough that I feel comfortable only cleaning that out with those same steps once a day after a BM. I can feel the hole getting shallower and shallower and shallower, which is really encouraging. But nature is a little bit cruel in that if you've ever had a wound or looked up, most people have had wounds, or looked up wound healing, one of the phases of wound healing, other than the thin watery discharge that I'm experiencing, is the itching. I don't know if anybody watching this has ever had a tattoo or anything, or maybe a large wound or a particularly itchy wound, but my bum is very, very itchy at times, which I'll take it. It's great because it shows me that it's healing. I can feel that the wound's healing as the hole gets smaller and smaller and shallower inside my rectum. But with that comes the itching, and sometimes I would just kill to grab a Q-tip and kind of put it up there and give it an itch, but you're not, even though, well, let me try to reorganize my thoughts. Even though nature is kind of cruel in that healing wounds tend to itch, you're not supposed to scratch them because that can disturb the wound healing, so you've just got to kind of grin and bear it. That's one of the things that I'm experiencing, and the thing that I suppose is bothering me most of all throughout this particular phase of wound healing is just the itch. It can be very, very itchy. I should say that the discharge that I'm experiencing, it's not anywhere near enough to even have to worry about wearing a panty liner. So if there are men watching this and they've had to suffer with panty liners while they had a fistula that was draining, for me anyway, I don't need to have to wear panty liners for the thin watery discharge that's coming out. That's how little of an amount there is. It's really not even particularly worth mentioning, except of course I want to let everybody know everything that I can possibly think of to share with them, and people are very, very curious who have asked me. Along with the healing that I can feel internally as the hole in my rectum, the wound gets shallower and smaller, I can see tissue, new tissue kind of growing in around areas of my anus. My tissue is kind of like, I suppose, up here a little bit, and it's just where the Kshar Sutra thread had cut down and through the fistula area, and now I can see, I suppose they call it granulation tissue, but it's new healing tissue. It looks very pink and very healthy, and that too is very itchy. I had a friend ask me how I knew that there was no more fistula and that things were healing up properly. I think that's because I've not got an MRI test yet, and in my opinion, in Canadian culture, we're really, really trained to look at a test result and say that this is what's happening based on the test result. But I personally trust my body as far as assessing my own wound healing. And so I know that my fistula is gone because my fistula, when I had it, always leaked feces from day one. And I received my fistula from an abscess drainage. And from the very first bowel movement since that happened until after I had my Kshar Sutra thread removed, my fistula always leaked feces. My anus doesn't do that anymore. There's no more hole anywhere that I could see. Most people, when they have a fistula, I would think they can see a hole somewhere, and there is no more hole. I can feel the itch, which is a telltale sign of healing. I can feel the hole in my rectum getting smaller and shallower as more and more tissue fills in. I can see tissue externally around my anal area filling in where the Kshar Sutra thread had cut through. My lymph node in my groin, for the first time since I developed an abscess, is gone. It's not gone, it's still in my body, but it's no longer swollen. And that lymph node was like horrifically swollen when I had an abscess, and then it was always swollen to various degrees when I had a fistula. That's not the case anymore at all. When I feel the area, I can't really feel anything. It feels pretty much the same as the other side. I have a heck of a whole lot more energy since this whole treatment has been successful, And when I had a fistula, of course, I had a low-grade infection all the time that my body was always trying to fight. My fistula sometimes would kind of get feces trapped up in there when I had it, and it just seemed like things seemed to cycle through, where sometimes it drained feces easily and sometimes it didn't. When it drained pus, sometimes it drained more pus, sometimes it drained less. And it almost seemed like at that point that things could get backed up. And when that happened, my lymph node in my groin would always swell up, letting me know that the infection was getting worse or it was more under control. So I've really learned over the past year to kind of feel that the area, my groin, my lymph node in my groin, and use that as a good indication of how things are going. So with that long ramble aside, has been one of my major indications of whether or not there's an infection going on in there, and there's my lymph node in my groin now is gone back to the way it should be. As I said before in several of my videos, bowel movements haven't been painful at all. So I think really things seem to be going very, very well. I guess the major outcome from all of this for me is just I have a lot more energy than I used to. I feel like I could just bounce off the walls half the time. I don't remember feeling this full of energy and hyper before I got really, really sick, but who knows. I do know that at work, a coworker has said that I'm still quite perky, and I'll joke with her and say, I got a new bum for Christmas. But I think aside from having more energy because of the physical aspect, I also just don't have the same sort of outlook on life that I used to. I'm just far more grateful for every little thing that happens or doesn't happen in my life, and more willing than I used to be to take things with a grain of salt, or if things are bothering me, or if people have said something that bothers me, I'll just kind of, I don't know, wave it away a bit, more so than I used to. So those would be the two biggest, I think, outcomes for me: more energy and just more great gratitude for every day that I have, and more willing to, I guess I always thought that tomorrow's not guaranteed, but even more so now, I don't want to wait around to experience anything that I'm able to experience now, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. I am still making the choice to adhere to a mostly vegetarian diet, which Dr. Bapat recommended for 2 weeks after the thread was removed. And that is to make sure that stools are soft and things in the gastrointestinal tract are running smoothly. But I found that after adhering to a vegetarian diet there, I just felt better overall, and my bowel movements were great. I always thought I had irritable bowel syndrome. Maybe I still do, I'm not sure. But I used to notice often that sometimes I'd have troubles in the washroom, which I knew was because of my diet, and I was trying to clean up my eating habits. But I guess in where I'm from, it's just so common to have a sort of, we call it a meat and potatoes diet. So if you go to a restaurant or to a friend's house, or if you're cooking for yourself, it's pretty much what you're going to eat is meat and something else, typically meat and rice or meat and potatoes. So the idea of removing meat from my diet was foreign until I went to India and talked to Dr. Bapat. So I have made the choice to continue with the mostly vegetarian diet. I do eat eggs, I do eat fish, and sometimes I eat chicken, but I basically have not eaten beef or pork at all since we got back. One of my favorite foods is hamburgers, so I probably will celebrate when my bum is 100% completely healed and have a hamburger, but it's certainly not going to be McDonald's. It'll be like a local restaurant with local beef, and try to be as healthy that way as possible, and it'll be like a celebration. I don't think it will be a routine thing, because one thing that shocked me was that I noticed I didn't really miss my old diet at all, and I still don't. I find that since I'm having to learn how to cook differently, I'm trying new things, and some of the recipes that I found are very, very tasty. So that was another positive outcome, I think. We've been trying to learn new vegetarian dishes, and also Indian dishes, because one thing that I really, really miss from my time in Pune is the food. Even though I wasn't able to eat spicy food at the time, which kind of restricted my food choices and what I could sample as far as the local cuisine. A lot of the foods I tasted there were just absolutely delicious. So of course, I ran off to YouTube and Google to find some recipes, and that's another change in my overall life from just my experience in Pune and my healing journey. I think the last major change that I made as far as my healing journey, and I suppose the, not repercussions, but the after effects of that, would be that my husband and I bought a bidet, which when we went to India, of course, the idea of the Indian style of cleaning up after a BM was foreign to us, but we came to find that it was just far superior, and that style is basically just to use water. We found for us that that was just far cleaner than our typical North American ritual of using toilet paper. And so we decided to buy a bidet for our washroom at home, and I would recommend that to anybody who's interested, of course, but also if you are still suffering from a fistula, I would recommend that. It's easier, it's more hygienic, in my opinion, and you can get bidets for relatively cheap off of places like Amazon. I will get on with another update about how my wound is healing in about another month's time. I would imagine things will just continue on the way they are, and hopefully by the time I talk to you again about this, my little wound, my hole inside my rectum will be all healed up, and it'll be time to request an MRI. And the Canadian medical system tends to move very, very slowly, so it will be interesting to see how long it takes me to get an MRI, if my doctor will even put through the request. Because I'm not sure if he will, since there's really nothing wrong with me at this point in time. Anyway, I'll see you all in about a month.